Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Festival of Nature 2022. This is our online programme. My name is Sam Langford. I'm the digital producer for the festival, and I'm so excited to be back for another event. You might have joined in our event earlier on with Nicola Bassett from Blue Ventures. Really interesting discussion. I've got so much more to go and find out about fishing in the oceans and communities around the world. But now I'm here with some coloured pencils and some paper. I'm getting ready for a draw along. We're going to be doing something a little bit different for the next hour as I welcome in two fantastic guests who are going to help us with this session today. So please say hello to Lauren Cook and to Jeanne Robinson.
Hello.
Hi, folks. How are you doing?
Not bad at all, Sam.
Very well, thank you. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you both. There's a little bit of trepidation in this, like trying to talk and to do a live drawing at the same time. I'm interested to see how I got on, but I'm not the expert here. Lauren, you are more of the expert here, so I'm going to ask you first of all, who are you and what do you do?
Yes, so I am Lauren. I'm a PhD student. I'm studying molecular ecology, which is the study of kind of animals and plants, but through DNA. And I'm also a freelance artist and animator. So that's me, yeah.
Hab, and then Jeanne.
And I am Jeanne Robinson, and I am Curator of Entomology at the Hunterian Museum at the University of Glasgow. So I teach entomology and I care for the collections of the Hunterian, and I am a pure Hymenoptera or bees, wasps and ants enthusiast.
Fab, which is like nice and convenient, because that's exactly what we're going to be focusing on for the session. Lauren, what is the plan for the session today? What are we going to be doing?
So we're going to draw a red-tailed mason bee, and these are the really nice ones that build their nests inside old snail shells. So I've got a picture of the drawing, and I used this lovely image from an entomology collection, which is so you can see all the parts, and you can see that this is the kind of setup that they have with their nests, and we're just going to be using coloured pencils, and I'm going to talk you through how to structure it and all the shapes before we go and colour it in.
Fab. So we're going to have a little bit of drawing, a little bit of discussion, find out a little bit more about these incredible animals. But I think before we get into that, and then I'm going to hand over you to start us on our drawing, is to find out what makes a bee a bee. And you've got a lovely video for us that can explain exactly what that looks like. Here it is, folks. Enjoy. This is great.
Britain is host to 270 species of bee, and we know that they're extremely important in their ecosystems as pollinators, enabling plants to be fertilised, to reproduce and grow fruits and seeds, providing our food crops and the clean air and oxygen we breathe. But what exactly makes a bee a bee? Well, a bee is a flying insect, closely related to wasps and ants. It has 2 pairs of wings, a pair of compound eyes, segmented antennae, and mouthparts for chewing and sucking up nectar. We are all familiar with honeybees and bumblebees which live in colonies, but did you know that the vast majority of bees in Britain are solitary, and some of them make their nests in some fascinating ways? For example, the blue carpenter bee, who hibernates through the winter in the hollowed-out stem of a bramble bush. Then there's the 2-coloured mason bee, who turns a discarded snail shell into a nest for one of her eggs, packs it with nectar and pollen, seals it off from predators, and buries the shell under a pyramid of sticks. And who could forget leafcutter bees? The females use circular pieces of leaves to construct little cells to protect each egg within their nests in deadwood or soil. When the eggs hatch, their cells are well provisioned for the larvae as they hibernate over winter. Unfortunately, bees are under global threat from loss of their habitat, pesticides, climate change and invasive species. Luckily, we can help by making our gardens, flower pots and window boxes more bee-friendly, planting flowers and other plants that bees like, leaving bits of wild garden and putting out bee hotels will create habitats for our bees and for us to enjoy their company. If we protect our bees, we protect our future.
You know when you forget that you're meant to be like presenting a thing, you're getting too engrossed in what you're watching. It's exactly what happened to me there.
I was lost in that. It was beautiful.
Thank you very much. I made it for a children's wildlife festival, just to try and show that it's not just bumblebees and honeybees, the ones that we can see all the time. But I don't think I know enough to go out and actually see one of these. I don't know kind of how to find a solitary bee, apart from putting bee houses up, and then you can see the ones going in there. I guess they're the ones we might encounter in our homes. But have you ever seen any solitary bees?
Yeah, quite a few. I suppose that's the interesting thing, isn't it? They are slightly more challenging to find. I mean, we have studied the social bees a lot better for very good reason. They're a lot easier to find, and they're there in abundance. But so I'm trying to think of the places where I've encountered them most near me in Scotland is certainly in the garden, on plenty of flowers and the wild spaces. They love bare soil. Very important for many of the mining species to nest in. And actually, if you're managing habitat, quite often, if you managed it for reptiles, it would also work out quite well for bees. So they like patches of bare soil, gaps between things where they can prosper, and often even along the side of paths. So where it's where the soil's got really good texture for digging in, and it's slightly trampled by moving people or traffic, then along the edges you'll often find bees nesting. And the other place I commonly see them, things like the lovely Colites bees, the plasterer bees, that they are commonly found along riverbanks and along sand dunes where the soil's kind of compacted and there's not many plants as well. So they're good places to look out. And as they mentioned, in my back garden, and still not yet occupied, I have got one of the solitary bee observation houses. So I check probably every other day, and I haven't arrived yet, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time, because I've got my bare soil, I've got my undisturbed kind of patches of vegetation and hollow stems for them to nest in, and I've got a wealth of plants. So
they'd be lucky if they found their way into your garden.
Well, they'd be deeply appreciated.
Yeah. It'd be a very two-way relationship. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, well, I guess if you see a bee in one of those places and it's a bee that you might not recognize, probably is a solitary bee. If it's not a bumblebee or a honeybee or a wasp or hoverfly or something that we might encounter more regularly.
I mean, I think most people can recognise a honeybee and a bumblebee. Yeah. There's a number of the solitary bees that look quite honeybee-like, that are similar in size and that are banded, but the solitary bees are hugely varied. There's little parasitic ones that actually look more like wasps. They're not very hairy, they're quite tiny, and they tend to exploit the other solitary bees. There's also some incredibly kind of distinctive and beautiful ones. Some of them look more like social wasps, the genus Nomada, which will work their way into mining bee nests. And there's incredibly beautiful fluffy, but there are some that are very distinctive, like the colours of their hairs or the certain looks about them that you can come to recognise them.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I've been stalking them all online, trying to find good photos, and
And because I've done a lot of survey work, and probably one of the other things that's lovely about them is with all of the bees is when you're surveying for them, quite often I would go up to a flower with a small tube, but I would hold the tube behind them. When the bees finish feeding, it will back it into the tube, and then I can just put the lid on for a closer look without any harm. but it makes you realise how good-natured and how determined they are to just get on with their work, because you might think that somebody sticking in a tube, if you were going to use your stinger, would be a good incentive, but they just fly away and get on with their business. They've got too much else to be getting on with. So a lot of them are just like flying teddy bears. So you can get quite close and have a good inspection without really worrying about any stings.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I love the description. It's like fluffy little teddy bears.
Yeah, that's so nice. Love them. I'm going to be going hunting after this.
But the one that I haven't seen in the flesh is the beautiful one that you're drawing today. But their biology is absolutely is so fascinating that I'd love to see it in action. I've seen video captures of them kind of going about their business. And I mean, there's a number of different species that will lay a number of different osmia or mason bees that will lay their eggs in snail shells. But the lovely bicoloured one that you're drawing today is the only one that produces that funky teepee of kind of dried vegetation on top of them. And I mean, seeing them try to manipulate the bits of dried vegetation, I mean, they can be like 6 times longer than they are. They look like tiny little witches, like flying across the air. It's something.
I love that. I love that description of the flying around on broomsticks. Broomsticks in. It's amazing. It's so cool. Right. So should I'll show everybody the shapes to start with, and we can obviously carry on chatting at the same time, but Sam, get your pencils ready. You got it? Yeah,
I'm good to go.
Good to go.
This is going to be chaos and a nightmare.
Are you not much of a drawer?
I used to be. I just don't have that much confidence in my skills, so maybe I'll surprise myself. Maybe. I doubt it, but.
Will it be the first bug you've drawn, Sam?
Sorry?
Will it be the first insect you've drawn, Sam?
With this kind of expert guidance, yeah.
Well, I don't know if you can see. I'll be going through it, but it's just basically 4 steps to do the outline, and then from that we're just going to put all the texture and detail in with the colouring pencils. So firstly, I hope you can see my pencil. We're just going to start with a straight line down the centre of your paper, and I'm going landscape because it might give you a bit more space for the wings. So just go for it with a nice straight line, and make sure you do this in pencil if you can, because we're going to rub some of these lines out as well. And Jeanne, you'll have to have a go at this afterwards. You can read what. Yeah. So once you've got your line, we're just going to go with like a semicircle right in the middle, and then just flip this over and draw the other half of it on the other side. So it's just a circle, but just using the that middle line just for a bit of guidance. So that is the middle bit of the body. What's that called?
That's the thorax. Yeah, so that's full of muscles for powering those tiny little wings.
Ah, wow. Okay.
So it's why it's so massive in things like moths and all the other mighty flyers. But this Lauren as well is a very distinctive feature. Like, you're doing a beautiful perfect sphere there. If you were looking at a honeybee, it would be a much more elongate abdomen, but the osmias are very kind of round and plump and pleasing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's probably why I was drawn to it. Like the plump ones. So yes, this is the body bit. What do you call that?
That's the abdomen.
Abdomen. I feel like I want to label it all, so I could do it on my other drawing.
And that's full of your sexy bits and your digestive tract, and all the other bits are located in there.
So all the organs are in there, and all the muscles.
Yeah, well, that's the wing and leg musculature. So that's the kind of locomotion center is the thorax.
Amazing. Here we go, learning already. Okay, so now we're just going to draw 2 smaller circles on top of the first one. And because they've got kind of like a wide head with the 2 eyes, which we'll put on top as well. Then we're just going to go for another semicircle on the top like that. And everyone keeping up, and can you see the you can see the lines okay?
Yeah. I'm finding myself concentrating really hard. Grand.
Yeah, this is why I didn't dare pick up my pencils. I knew I would. I just get mesmerised by the drawing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna do it later.
We're actually sort of, this is the kind of hard bit. Then we're just going to add in some antennae. But for now, we're just going to draw some kind of guidelines. So they're just kind of keep them light, because we're going to draw over them.
And you know, those antennae are really key. So there's lots of flies that mimic bees, the hoverflies, but they all have very, very tiny antennae by comparison. So spotting those decent sized antennae is one of the keys to it being a bee.
Ah, that's really good to know. Yeah. So they haven't got it quite right. They'll spot the difference.
Yeah. Not fooling any entomologists.
Yeah.
And there's also a beautiful species of solitary bee called the longhorn, where the male's antennae are about as long as the body, and they're absolutely gorgeous looking things.
Wow, that's amazing. They must look really ornate with the massive antennae coming off. Nice, I'll have to look them up.
What causes that? Is that kind of like is that a display thing, or does it have more of a function for the animal?
Do you know, in that particular case, I don't know. So in general, with the solitary bee, with the bees, the males have longer antennae. It's just more pronounced in the longhorn. So they have an extra antennal segment. It might be with finding mates.
Yeah.
Because it's locating an eligible partner is a rather major part of his the daily duties. So, and of course, there's huge amounts of sensory equipment on those antennae.
Yeah, interesting. Right, sorry, we'll just put the last shapes in. But at the moment, it's looking quite like an ant, isn't it?
It is.
And they're part of your study species, aren't they? Because they're quite closely related to bees.
They really are. Yeah. I mean, very, very. I mean, effectively, the ants, the bees, and the wasps all kind of evolved from a primitive wasp. So kind of wing loss, and all the additional hairs and all the rest of it are all things that came later in the evolutionary chain. Bees are effectively really just hairy vegetarian wasps.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So they actually had wings to start with and then lost it.
Well, there's been multiple kind of, sometimes, you know, evolution doesn't just move in one direction. It kind of wobbles about all over the place sometimes. So wings have been lost and regained again. And certainly there are wasps that don't have wings that aren't ants, but are often mistaken for them. So, yeah, so it's not unidirectional.
Yeah, that's really, I think I was learning at the Natural History Museum about flight evolving a few different times in dinosaurs and birds, and mammals are the only ones to have evolved it. I mean, sorry, bats are the only mammals to have evolved flight. But yeah, it's really interesting how it always kind of, yeah, as you say, goes in different directions. It's, yeah, really interesting. Right, so the last bit of this, I've just drawn this circle because it gives us a bit of a guideline when we're drawing to keep it looking 3D. So that's just kind of like shows that it kind of curves up. And now we're just going to add 2 wings. So just draw these kind of triangle type shapes. If you draw a little line down on the side of the smaller circle, and then just go with a diagonal line up, and then one kind of here-ish. Don't worry too much about these, but obviously if you're not happy with them, just rub it out until you are happy. Something like this, and eventually it's gonna, we'll add in all the curves later.
And we mentioned, well, how much the hoverflies can look like the bees, but this is another way that enables you to distinguish them. So the fact that you've got 4 wings here, Lauren, is a real important key feature you mentioned in your video, because the flies would only have 2 wings and a pair of balancing organs or tiny little knobs on the back that used to be the hind wings called halteres.
Really? So do they still look like wings, the balancing organs?
No, they look nothing like them. They look they look more like tiny little spoons.
That's cool. Sorry,
some great little descriptors in here today. I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying the descriptors.
Hairy vegetarian wasp is a really good one. And tiny witches. Okay, so that was our basic bee, and from this I will sort of try and guide you through how I put all the kind of curves on, but everybody is, you know, their own. These don't have to be scientifically accurate, so obviously you don't even have to color it black and orange if you don't want to, but basically the only kind of major change is this: they've got a tiny bit more square than it looks on the circle. So we're just going to make that just kind of straighten out that side, and it ends in a little point which should come at the end of your line. So, but I don't know if they sting. Do you know that these ones have a stinger, or does it just
they do have a sting? Well, I'm assuming. So what I have read about osmias and stinging is about bicornis, or the red mason bee, which is the more common species, and that is that they have a much weaker sting than a honeybee, and they're even less likely to use it.
Right.
So.
So we don't need to,
because it's only the females in any of these bees that have a stinger, because it's actually evolved from an egg-laying tube called an ovipositor that has evolved to deliver venom. So the males can never sting.
Is that the same in any species of bee and wasp?
Yeah. So you can absolutely dazzle school groups by picking up male bumblebees in your bare hands, but you have to make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. How would you identify a male from a female if you would just kind of didn't have your microscope and everything?
Yeah, I probably should say I'm not encouraging people to go out grabbing bees. So in some of the males, quite often they of course they are often smaller. They often have longer antennae. A lot of them in things like the bumblebees have paler faces, and there's a whole suite of features. Whereas others can look much more like the females. So it's highly variable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the male of this species is less colourful.
That's correct.
From what I've seen, it's kind of more of a grey colour on the back.
Yeah, kind of goldeny brown, isn't it? Well, browny grey. With perhaps a slight ginger tinge at the back. But yeah, not nearly as dramatically coloured. I mean, it's called the 2-coloured mason bee, and it only really gets that from the female, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a cousin like that, kind of grey on the top, just a little ginger tinge in the back.
You can call him Osmia Bicolour then.
I need to. I need to going forward. That's his new name.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely rocking more of the male mason bee as well.
I'll just show you quickly how I put this eye in. So it's like another oblong on the top of the big circle that we've drawn, but I've kind of merged it into the side of the head at the top, so it kind of just looks a bit like a teardrop. Because of the angle that we're drawing at, it curves round the front of the head, so I don't know how well you can see that, but that is the vague outline. And then I actually went from this point. Oh, I'll draw the wings in, but then after that, we're just going to switch over to the colouring pencils if you've got them or if you want to use them, because then you've got kind of less to rub out and it just looks a bit neater. So for the wings, we're just going to draw this curve. So firstly, we go underneath the line that we've drawn, and then slowly it takes over and just loops around the top. Got that, Sam?
Yep, I think so.
Yep.
I think so.
Then, because there's 4 wings, we're going to go from the middle of the kind of triangle that we've drawn and do another curve, but this time go to the end of the diagonal here, and then just join it up like that.
Fab, got it.
Yep. And then the bottom wing, we're just going to do the same thing. So go above the diagonal first, and then go below it, and then curve it all the way around to the top and meet the other wing. Then take that all the way back over, and it kind of overlaps in the one that I'm looking at. You can put a little point at the end if you want to. And it will look a lot clearer once we rub out the guidelines as well. So once we've done that, we can do the other side. When you're ready, let me know.
I'm caught up.
Oh, caught up? Okay. So if you can remember, but otherwise I'll just show you again. So we're just going to go under, and then over, and then this kind of mini arc. It's a bit of a thin line there. And then join up to the top. I might change that with my rubber in a minute. And then the same thing, we're going to go over and under, and then join it up. I made that one
amazing.
really swoop down, so I'm just bring that up. Cool. So now I'm just going to rub out some of these really messy lines, and then I will show you some tips for colouring the fur, which is just so lovely on this bee. It's just, yeah, really, it does look like a teddy bear. And is that some kind of adaptation to keep them warm, or is that nothing to do with that?
No, so the hairs, hairs have a huge, and there's so many different kind of hairs and bristles in insects. But on the bees, number one, I'm based in Scotland, and bees are still quite interesting up here because a lot of them are able to cope better with northern climes than a lot of other species. So they definitely have a role in helping to keep them warm. But they're also, of course, incredibly important for pollination. What I should mention is, in terms of identification, that if you're looking at the social bees and you see them on flowers, things like the bumblebees and the honeybees have special kind of things that are called pollen baskets, which are like rigid hairs that they make wet balls of pollen, and they collect wet balls of pollen and they carry them on their hind legs. Now, with species like the mason bee here, and with the leaf cutters, they actually just have special hairs on the underside of their abdomen. And they carry absolutely massive volumes of pollen on them, to the point where you might not be able to see a lot of this colour at all, and they might end up entirely the colour of the pollen, like totally smothered in yellow. And actually, there's some indication that the closest relative, this Osmia rufa, the red mason bee, they're finding is a far more effective pollinator than honeybees. Honeybees are very tidy. They're very neat about what they do, and they do this wet pollen collecting technique, whereas the mason bee goes in, absolutely smothers itself in dry pollen, so that pollen's more easily dislodged when it goes to visit another flower, and there's a lot more of it to do that. So apparently they're many, many times more effective as pollinators.
Oh, wow. So they're, really important to encourage the habitats, all the different types of habitats that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the colour of those hairs is hugely diagnostic as well, very useful. If the bee gets rubbed, which you can do if it's been working very hard or had a tough old life, then what you'll see is the black cuticle, the black kind of skeleton beneath. But they're festooned with beautiful golden hairs or these gorgeous red ones. And some of them have the most incredible, gorgeous, bushy white moustaches.
And the moustaches for pollen as well.
With they're commonly in the males, and I'm sure they pick up pollen as well, but I'm not sure of the function of the moustache.
Yeah.
Looking extremely debonair.
More to find out, yeah. Okay, so I'll just show you some of the legs. So they've got, from what I can see, kind of 3 big segments. I'm sure Jan will be able to tell us something more about those, but they kind of get bigger as you go back towards the body. So I'm just starting to use my black pencil, but if you want to carry on with graphite, then that's fine. So I'm just basically going either side of the straight line that I've drawn and just drawing in some of these segments around them. And I really like just layering up my colouring pencils, so I'm not too worried about putting colour in and then kind of going over it. And you also can rub them out if you press really hard with the rubber. So they've got these kind of like, it tapers in towards the end of the leg, and then they seem to have 2 little kind of hooks at the end. So I just draw that in like that, if you can see those ones. And then, basically just repeat them. And the leg that's under the wing, I'll show you how I kind of made the wing look transparent over those, but we basically just colour them in quite lightly. So basically just kind of repeat what I've just done there for the other legs.
And there's oh, sorry, Sam.
Oh no, I'm pleasantly surprising myself so far.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, it's very good.
There you go.
Now, there's a beautiful close relative of the mason bees called the leaf cutters, and they were in your lovely video, Lauren, weren't they? So sometimes the first you'll know is if you've got perfectly cut out circles and ovals from your rose bushes, or from your there's one of there's another plant they're quite fond of, but roses is the one I've seen it on. And those are the leafcutter bees, and there's a lovely species called the Willoughby's leafcutter bee, where the male has little furry boxing gloves on his front legs. So if you see a gorgeous bee with lots of pollen on its belly and a massive pair of furry boxing gloves, then you're likely to have a Willoughby's leafcutter. Wow,
that would be amazing. I'd love to get these kind of bees around the place. Is it because I live in London, and the place where I live, it's quite leafy. I'm quite lucky to be kind of have green spaces and things around me, but I don't know whether it's too kind of fragmented, where there might be a really good garden where someone's put a lot of effort in, and other places where they've got wildflowers and let them grow, but then also other kind of places which are just completely concreted over. And is there some kind of, like, how can we get more of them in these kind of urban environments?
Yeah, there's 2 really interesting bits that you've kind of touched on there, Lauren. One, actually, connectivity is a massive thing, but it's amazing how important people's gardens and even kind of abandoned brownfield sites are for things like that now. So say the species we're drawing today, the 2-coloured mason bee. It was traditionally associated with calcareous grasslands, so acid grasses, but it's slowly creeping its way up north and seems to be using brownfield sites as the stepping stones to do that. So it's already made it up as far as Cheshire. So those abandoned open quarries and old workings with lots of bare soil, lots of flowering weeds are hugely important. But the other thing that's massively important is garden spaces in terms of connectivity, hedgerows, canals, road verges, anything that provides something that's more joined up. But gardens can make a huge difference. Things like the mason bees are also like old air bricks, crumbling walls, a lot of things that are actually associated with human habitation. So they can exploit those to live in as well. And gardens provide some of the best nectar sources.
Yeah, that's interesting. So these kind of derelict looking sites, if we could find a way to protect them now that they're not, well, I don't want to say rewilding because it's got a lot of common, what am I trying to say? Connotations, but sort of being allowed to get the weeds back and the other wildflowers and things like that, that would be really beneficial.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So sometimes things that we don't think are that prepossessing have got everything that a creature needs.
Yeah, exactly. That was apparently a very Victorian kind of mistake. They wanted to make everything completely neat and tidy, and got rid of all of the variation of habitats.
But it still fascinates me the amount of effort that that my local council goes to cut patches of grassland that people don't even use for amenity. So like really steep slopes and bits that I've never seen a family having a picnic on. Nobody's playing ball games on it. It's actually kind of useless space, but it still needs to be mowed within an inch of its life and have herbicides sprayed all around the edges of it. And you expect, you want to encourage a bit more laziness actually with your green spaces. It's certainly better for the pollinators. I thought that people quite like being lazy, but it appears that in certain things they don't.
So I really enjoy the month of May in Glasgow when they've been doing the No Mow May. The park near me has a giant field in it that it is used, but like throughout May they did not touch it, and so many wildflowers come up and so many things are using it. So whether it is pollinators, and then you get the knock-on effect of that. We had swifts that were flying around screaming in the sky, and then 1st of June hits and it's gone. And you really notice a change.
It's so marked, isn't it? Because during lockdown, that was one of my saving graces, was the field behind us wasn't mowed at all, and it was hoaching with ringlets and swarms of butterflies that aren't there again this year. Oh, that's really taking shape beautifully now, Lauren.
Yeah, it's getting there now. Yeah, added some of the chunky bits in. The rest of it is basically just fur. Although these lines, are they the veins?
Yes, they're wing veins. Yeah, and they're incredibly diagnostic as well when you're trying to figure out what bee family that you're looking at.
I wouldn't try and identify it from my drawing. I haven't done it exactly how it's supposed to look. It's quite difficult to wrap your brain around when you're kind of following the lines. But yeah, we'll do another scientific drawing class another time.
But they provide an important support network for the wings when they're in flight and affect how it bends and flexes as well.
Okay.
The hoverflies have one big vein along the middle, so that's our bee mimics. So that's another thing that would help you recognise them, apart from that they've only got 2 wings. And it's incredible because that one vein and their size means that when they pull their wings up, it makes a downward triangle. And when they pull the wings down, it makes an upward triangle. And that makes the air currents move around in a figure of 8, which allows them to hold stationary in the air, which is what gives it, is one of the other features that lets you recognize them in flight. So the wing veins can be very important in functionality of the wings during flight.
That's really interesting. So with other things that can hover, like a kestrel, is that do you know if that's a figure of 8 kind of?
I think it is. Yeah, I'm not so good on things with feathers, but I think that being able to exploit that to make the air currents, because you can. Yeah, I think that figure of 8 thing's very key. But of course, the air forces, when you're a much smaller insect, are very different.
Yeah, because they're sort of bigger than the insects. I mean, wind can really just like fly you all over the world if you weigh that nothing.
Yeah, and the one I can't quite get my head around is like there's loads of the absolutely minuscule like fairy flies, like tiny wasps called the mimarids, and they have tiny fringed wings. But apparently, by the time you reach their kind of proportions, which are kind of not any more than a millimeter, then I think it's more like rowing through treacle than it is actually like kind of. You look at them at the mercy of the air currents, but it's happening on a scale that you can't even really get your head around what the physical experience would be like.
Yeah, when you're the same size as the particles in the air.
Yes.
That's amazing. It must be fascinating to study those under a microscope.
Well, I think that's probably one of the major reasons I am an entomologist is microscopy, because even some of the most mundane of creatures, when you get them under the microscope, are just mind-blowing.
Yeah, I bet.
Outside of my work with the Festival of Nature, I work on another project at the University of Glasgow that is focused on ticks at the Centre for Virus Research. And getting to see these creatures that a lot of people really have trepidation around, that are parasite, bite onto people. But as soon as you get to see them up close under a microscope, they're beautiful creatures.
Really?
Especially when you see, again, we've talked about it already, about the kind of male and female kind of dimorphism between the two. And the female Ixodes ricinus, which is the deer tick, which is the one that's most commonly found in Scotland, has this kind of orangey red bum, and they just look really cute under a microscope. Not so much when they bite onto you and they start crumbling up. Then I'm still a little bit like, get away. But I would agree with you, Jan, about like seeing things under the microscope, but you see it in a whole new light, don't you?
Yeah, it's amazing how many of them have a kind of endearing kind of Pokemon-like quality.
Yeah.
I never get to look at this kind of stuff with my science work because I do DNA-based study. So usually I'm sort of going out into the environment and just getting environmental samples, so just of water or soil, and then running whatever the DNA is in that sample can match it to the organisms. But often I kind of think, oh wow, we've just found that this crab lives here, but I've never seen one of these crabs. We've looked really hard and we can't find it, but the DNA's there, so it must be there. But I think it'd be amazing to actually be able to see all of those, as well as kind of knowing that they're there with the DNA. But I guess the pros and cons of using the technique for surveying is that it can be a lot quicker, because you don't have to kind of go around identifying everything, and because someone like you has already done it. So I still find it interesting, but I would like to kind of delve into a little bit more of the microscopy and everything.
One of the other things is when you're surveying is you always take new information about if you're spending time out trying to find them and locate them and understand them, then inadvertently you learn an awful lot about their biology along the way.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you need both methods.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I really love the idea of finding that DNA without getting to see the animal, like kind of piecing together a puzzle in a way.
Yeah, definitely. It's really, really interesting. I'm going to be doing a project about they're bringing oysters back. So the native flat oyster, they are bringing kind of oyster reefs back to around in Dorset, and there's a few other projects going on around the UK. But because all of our oyster beds have completely dwindled and they're really threatened habitat, mainly from overfishing, but also kind of other land use change and climate change. But obviously oysters are really beneficial for the environment as well because they're filter feeders. So we're going to try and also they have things living on their shells and living on the cages. And so through the DNA surveys, we're going to try and see what other organisms are coming back into the environment now that they're there and now that the water's got a bit more clarity and things like that. So there's an endangered seahorse that lives in the area in Dorset as well. And so we're going to try and see if that DNA is there and how all the microorganisms are responding as well. And it should be a bit of an indicator of how well the ecosystem is doing. So yeah, really looking forward to that.
And the field insights you were going to get from looking at the microorganisms wouldn't be huge either. And so important how all those ecosystems are functioning.
Yeah, so important. Yeah, and often overlooked just because we can't see them. Yeah, so hang on. So I've just realised we've only got 10 minutes. So I'm just going to show how I've just kind of done some of this furry technique. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but you just kind of make it look a little bit like hairs. So just go around and add in these short strokes, and you just kind of layer them up wherever you need them. You can be really rough with it. And my art teacher at school always said, make the dark bits as dark as you can and the light bits as light as you can. So try and leave the bits which are kind of supposed to be white or light, kind of try and make sure you leave some of those and press really hard with the pencil. I like to. I mean, everyone has different styles, but you can get a lot kind of more intensity of the colour if you press really hard. And they've got these nice kind of stripes. So you just kind of this original one took me maybe an hour or so, and so you can kind of carry on afterwards if you want to spend a while doing this and have a kind of relaxing time. But that's the kind of general vibe. Get some oranges, do some colouring. And it's quite a nice thing to do with kids as well. My little nephew's 3 now, and he's just kind of getting into drawing. He drew a tube map the other day. Loves drawing. Yeah. So I need to get him into drawing some bees and things. Very talented. How's yours coming on, Sam?
Yeah, I'm still pretty pleased with this. Like, I'll have to have more courage, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I think a lot of it is down to the guidance that I'm getting is really helping. So.
Oh, good. You don't have to say that.
I know I don't. But it is absolutely true.
So, do you draw a lot for pleasure, Lauren? Just to kind of wind down? Do you find it quite mindful with everything else going on?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a change when you're doing it. Since I've been doing it more kind of not as a job, but as kind of a side job on the PhD. When you obviously, when there's pressure on anything, when you're busy, it becomes another thing on the to-do list. But I really, really love it. I don't have the same experience in any of my other work where I'll start doing something and then I'll look at my watch and it'll be like, oh my gosh, it's 4 p.m. I don't know where the time's gone. It's 10 and I haven't had lunch, and like you just get completely engrossed in it. And I don't have that with anything else that I do in my life, really. So it's just I've always really loved it, and I'm really glad that I can bring it back into my life, like now that I've gone down the science route and keeping it going on a bit. Yeah.
We've got someone mentioning in the chat, sorry, just whilst I've seen it. Two things, actually. One, people want to see my drawing at the end. I promise you. And someone else mentioning another native oyster project on the Humber. Which is going on. You can see the Humber from the bedroom window.
Oh, really? You can? Oh, no, they can. Sorry.
Oh, no, they can. My eyesight is not that good.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how it kind of how it all changes, and it's great that they've got the protection from fishing as well. I don't know about the Humber, but in the Solent, which is where I'm looking, down in Weymouth, or next to the Isle of Wight, it's protected from fishing now. So I think it will really be able to recover, which would be great. That's what we need for the bees as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, less fishing. Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah, I'm just basically trying to keep the sort of bits in the middle a bit lighter, because they're going to be the bits that capture the light. And yeah, I'm sorry if we don't finish this today. I got distracted chatting as well. It's harder than it looks.
So what other things are going on at the Hunterian in Glasgow at the moment, Jan?
Oh, now we've been working on a new collaborative exhibition with an artist called Charlie Hammond, who it's called Workaround. And Charlie's very interested in labour, and he came into the collections to chat to me about ants. So we're quite interested. We're putting individual specimens in little cases in and around the galleries. That's quite an unusual format for them to be displayed in. But I was actually wondering whether it will, and I was thinking about this in relation to the drawing, whether it'll encourage people to look more closely at things in general, because if I've been doing a whole day in front of the microscope, then quite often I could just walk into a wall or step out in front of a bus, because my vision has become resolved down in such a way that it's the detail that I'm noticing. I'm hoping that cross-disciplinariness might encourage people to actually look more closely at the artworks as well. Because looking closely is definitely something that kind of good art and good science share.
Definitely. I had a tour of the rare books collection at the Natural History Museum in London the other day, and it was absolutely like mind-blowing. All of the naturalists sort of around the time of Captain Cook and later as well, they all do these absolutely amazing scientific drawings and all of the watercolors, and they look so lifelike. And it's just really does show that art was really a way to make sense of what
important. I mean, before we had colour photography, the two were so intrinsically linked, because it was the only way we had of documenting and sharing those appearances. Oh, talking about, I mean, that's one of the things I love most about working with the insect collections at the Hunterian, is that as well as kind of looking after materials we get from the kind of research projects that are going on at the uni today, so that we can get maximum use out of those insects for other researchers. We have material from the 18th century from Captain Cook's voyages. So I think it's only really us, the Linnaean Society and the Natural History Museum, that have collections that
really
are old.
Wow.
So, yeah,
really rare.
But we've got a tray of beautiful bees, including some that were collected from Australia on the first voyage.
Okay, folks, we're getting to 5 minutes to go. This has just vanished away from us in terms of
I know,
time.
it's gone so quickly. This is one of those times I've been talking about that you just don't know where the time's gone. But I'd love to see anyone's drawings. If anyone's joining in at home, I'd love to see if anyone managed to have a go. So send
We've
them
had a
in.
couple of people saying that they joined too late to draw along, but really glad to know that they can watch it back later.
Oh,
That's
that's
To go
good.
home and have a
Yeah.
go.
That's
yeah.
what I should be doing. That's so lovely. What do you most enjoy drawing, Lauren? What do you do for the ultimate drawing pleasure?
That's a good question. I think I've always, I don't know, I think I've always been fascinated by marine kind of things. I really love all the colours, just find it kind of just really relaxing and soothing. So I think if I ever had a choice, like you can draw anything you want, it would be something like a whale or, you know, just a creature that I find just really beautiful, and you kind of just want to just be immersed in it while you're doing it. And if you can't go swimming with it, it's kind of another way to connect somehow. Yeah. What about you? Do you do any kind of creative things outside your work?
Do you know, creatively, actually, it's funny. I really loved drawing when I was at school, and then when it came to the science art split, I thought I'd always keep the art going.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I haven't. So, yeah. I spend a lot of time photographing insects and enjoying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But then an awful lot of the rest of my time is now consumed with gardening. So.
Yeah. That's a kind of similar kind of mindful, creative, and using your hands, and it's very practical and nice thing to do. Yeah. How's your colouring going, Sam? Are you nearly there?
Yeah, I'm getting on not too badly. I think I'm going to be quite pleased with this at the end.
Nice.
And have you got any other drawing projects coming up, Lauren, that people can join in with, or what's next on the cards?
Yeah. I haven't got any draw-alongs that I know about, but I have got a couple of animations that I'm starting. I've got one about aquifers and trying to raise the importance of protecting our groundwater, and it's quite similar in all the ways that you'd kind of think of to protect or to make rivers cleaner. Those are the kind of things that we need to think about for groundwater, but I didn't even really know what an aquifer was or groundwater before I started it. So yeah, looking forward to getting that one done. And then one with the Beaver Trust again. So I did an animation about beavers for them a couple of years ago now, and so looking forward to working with them again on another project. So yeah.
Oh, it's hard to think and talk at the same time.
It is hard. My final tip for people at home, if anyone's going to kind of carry on with this after, is that a white pencil is probably the best thing that you can have when you're colouring, because you can blend all of these colours together. And so like this part here, that's kind of how you get these like 3D kind of looking bits. As I said earlier, making the light bits lighter, so you can just, as if you were painting, but blend all the colours together. So if I'm going to now spend another half an hour on this, it will mostly be with my white pencil. Once you've got all the colours down, and you can colour the wings in like that as well. Makes them look a bit more like a stained glass window.
Okay, I'm going to stop with mine at that point, just as we are coming up to that 1 hour mark. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that. It's like starting to take some shape. It's not perfect, but yeah, it's not the disaster that I was expecting.
Doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, well, in my mind it does. It's the way that I want to do it. But
yeah.
Thank you so much, folks. This has been like such a quick hour.
Yeah,
we've been here for a whole hour doing this. Oh, thank you so much, both of you. Lauren, was there anything that you wanted to round off with, just about what we've been doing?
No, I mean, if anyone wants, if I went too quickly or if anyone has any questions, just get in touch with me on social media and I'm happy to answer any questions or if you want any more tips. But yeah, that's all from me. And I'm sorry we couldn't chat more, Jan. I would really love to hear more about what you do as well.
Yeah, it's been lovely to meet you, Lauren. And I'm going to give that a good try. It might be my relaunch of my artistic career.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm gonna use the power that I have to make my face really big. I apologize for people at home. But thank you so much to Lauren and to Jan for coming along to be part of the draw along today. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for the comments that we've been getting in, and I've been seeing people that have been watching and liking posts as well. Please do check out all of the other things that are happening as part of the Festival of Nature 2022. We're running until next Saturday. There's over 90 in-person and online events that are happening in Bristol and Bath and online, so all over the world as well. It's been an absolute pleasure so far. I'm going to be back again tomorrow with a panel discussion for the voices of future generations. We're going to be hearing from young people who are authors and talking about climate and sustainability. It's going to be so much fun. You can find that on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. Hopefully, we'll see you then. For now, though, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Take care and see you all very soon.
Bye, everyone.